I wanted to be a little more specific to those that have asked about dating the New Testament and also the book of Revelation, and especially for those that were looking maybe for a little bit more of a scholarly response. I get it. That no New Testament document tells of the temple's destruction is astonishing. This is what eventually turned me to take a hard look at the dates I had learned in my seminary and doctoral programs. Why wouldn't, ask yourself this question, why wouldn't the temple's destruction be a highlight in any book written after its destruction? The significance would be earth-shattering to any first century Jew. One would never think of someone writing about, let's say, New York and terrorism, and then failing to mention the World Trade Center. We couldn't even imagine that, right? Or someone writing about Jewish struggles in Nazi Germany, they would obviously mention the Holocaust. If anybody was reading something about New York and terrorism, or you were reading something about Jewish struggles in Germany, and it didn't include those things, you and most scholars also would conclude that they were written before those things happened, because otherwise they would be mentioned. As scholar John A.T. Robinson noted, and I think this is important, he said one of the oddest facts about the New Testament is that what on any showing would appear to be the single most datable and climactic event of the period, the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, and with it the collapse of institutional Judaism based on the temple, is never once mentioned as a past fact. That's pretty important to note. So we come to the Gospel of John, which is usually dated late. We find in John 5, he has a present tense of the verb eimi, esten. And it's correctly translated by most English translations with the present tense. It says, there is in Jerusalem. And many try to dismiss this usage by saying that it is a historical present. A historical present, to those maybe unfamiliar with language, is a past event being written as in the present tense. This reading is implausible. The copulative or the equative verb eimi is never used this way in the New Testament. And as Greek scholar Daniel Wallace states, the equative verb is never used as such in the New Testament, and perhaps not anywhere else either, because it doesn't fit the semantical requirements of the historical present. Now listen, there's a ton of research on this, and you can do your own work, but suffice to say, there isn't reason to see esten as a historical present. John should be taken at face value in that he is writing in the present tense, and he must be understood as writing before AD 70, or those things wouldn't exist that he's calling out in John 5 after the destruction of the temple. The book of Revelation we come to it doesn't need to be late dated either. There are many reasons to believe a date before AD 70. Typically, when we talk about dating of books from a scholarly standpoint, we talk about internal arguments and external arguments. Some of the internal arguments that seem to be in favor of a date for AD 70, first and foremost, in Revelation 11, the temple is being measured out for judgment. That seems to indicate it was still standing. The temple was destroyed in AD 70, so it would seem that John would have written this differently had the temple not been there. Secondly, there's tension between the Jews and Christians in Revelation. You can see this in chapter 2 and chapter 3, verse 9 of each of those chapters. That wouldn't have been as significant after the AD 70 destruction. Third, there is strong textual evidence that Revelation 13 and the usages of 666 or 616 in other manuscripts refers to Nero. The research on this is legion, so you can do that for yourself. In Revelation 17:10, it speaks of 5 kings that have fallen, one that is, and one who is coming. The most natural way to interpret this verse is that 5 Roman emperors had fallen, and the 6th was currently reigning. Nero is that 6th man to be recognized as emperor of Rome. You can also find in Revelation 11:8, it's conclusive as to the city that's going to be destroyed. It's Jerusalem. It says specifically it's the city where their Lord was crucified. So when we come to external arguments, things outside of the book of Revelation in favor of dating, the Syriac version of the New Testament, which has been dated back to around the 2nd century AD, states that Revelation was written during the reign of Nero. That would put the date somewhere between 64 and 68 AD. The Muratorian fragment, which dates back to somewhere between 170 and 190 AD, states that the work of John, Revelation, was written during the reign of Nero. We also come to the Aramaic Peshitta, which is a version that makes the note that the date is prior to 70 AD. And the title page of Revelation and that work states that this work of John was written right after the reign of Nero. The Monarchian prologues that date somewhere between 250 and 350 AD claim that Paul also wrote to the seven churches of Revelation. If that's true, and they wrote after, he says that they wrote after John had written, that would mean that Revelation is written even before some of the other Pauline epistles. Things like these are some of the reasons why I don't see any real compelling data as a scholar to date the New Testament books after 70 AD. And I would recommend reading the book Rethinking the Dates of the New Testament, which was written in 2022. A very scholarly approach, dates all the books pre-70, and if you really want to get your mind around this and understand it maybe from a differing position, I would highly recommend that book, which you'll see here as a picture. Thanks.